Welcome back, everybody, to the Freelance Teacher. We've been talking about a lot of important things of late. This is the latest episode of the GED report. Let's not forget two things. One is our sponsor, again, sponsored by Teachable.com, thefreelanceteacher.teachable.com for ACT prep. The other classes are being made as we speak. How to be a grammar and literacy expert in diagramming sentences and a SAT prep. Other things will be on their way as well, low price or free classes for you. The second thing is to remember is GED is the general education or general equivalency diploma, and it is a test you take over the span of 2 or 3 days. The last time I checked it was 2. It might be 3 now. They keep making it a little harder, but it is a short exam where you get your high school equivalency diploma by taking the test, which really throws the idea of high school into a weird place because no one ever asks where you went to high school. It's very, very rare. Maybe in social settings, if it is one of those things where you know the area or you grew up in the same vicinity. But other than that, no one really asks. No one cares. If it's on your resume, it's at the bottom of the second page. And so in theory, a GED really is what Chris Rock called it, a good enough degree. It's good enough for what we are doing today and how meaningless they listen to the words I choose carefully, they have made the high school diploma. So GED report, short, quick analysis of events that have come up. And I must have been bored to tears because I like Twitter less and less. It's really just for nonsense and some quick reading, and to comment and like anything now is ridiculous. I mean, when you're a nobody like I am, very few people say anything back or acknowledge in any way what you've said or if you've liked their post. So, I mean, regular people maybe, but the people who rule over us and are big shots, no, that's not the case. So, anyway, I was on Twitter and I saw that Kyle Korver has written an article that he's been just dying to write over the past few years. Now, Kyle Korver's been in the NBA. He's an NBA shooting guard, small forward, and a good one. He's a three-point specialist, has one of the best nicknames in the history of basketball, Threesus. That's just great. And so he, 6'7", white dude from Pella, Iowa. And he has been in the NBA for, got to be close to 15 years probably now. And so Korver's been dying to write this article. And what is it an article about? Well, as in today's zeitgeist, in today's atmosphere, you could only imagine it is Kyle Korver talking about race. So Kyle Korver is a talented NBA player at the pinnacle of his profession. I'm going to guess, I didn't look it up, I meant to before I started recording, but you guys, my legions of fans, are always demanding stuff right away, so I didn't take the time. I just hit record right away. But I'm going to guess that Korver's pulled in somewhere in the neighborhood of $60 million in his career. It's probably more, but I'm going to say $60 million in his NBA career. And he decides to write, he's at the very end of his NBA lifespan, an article on race. And what does he say? Well, the usual. White people in this kind of systemic racist country, white people aren't responsible for the sins of their fathers and the sins of the past, but they do need to, they're not guilty, but they need to take responsibility for racism in the present and in the past. And that's his word, responsibility. And it really shows you how out of touch somebody like Korver is. I actually replied in a tweet, which was a complete waste of time, that it was a well-written article and there were some good points, which there were. We'll go into those in just a short minute. But the fact that he's in a league that is 75% black, and he's the rare white person who can actually play in the NBA, yet his essay that he needed to write after all this time is about the badness of white people and the country. And I wrote back, it's real odd. I mean, good points and stuff, good points, but it's weird that there's the cognitive dissonance of a guy in a league that is 75% white, in a country that would allow such a thing, and you have an article about white people and what they need to be responsible for. Now, this is troublesome in so many ways. A, it really contributes to the race war that they've been fomenting. And, you know, let's talk about race all the time. Well, eventually, people are just going to see their skin as their uniform, and they're going to say, screw everything else. If that's the way I'm supposed to think, then that's the way I'm going to think. As we continually batter our young people with talk on race and very, very little else. So, the other thing is, again, my main part with the Korver stuff is how out of touch you are with regular people. Korver brings up in two very good points. He brings up a point where some guy was screaming racial epithets, it turns out, at Russell Westbrook after a game, and Westbrook mouthed back to the fan, and they were barking back and forth. So Westbrook snaps back at a fan who, it looks like anyway, was saying racist stuff to Russell Westbrook, talented shooting guard, point guard for the Oklahoma City Thunder, Mr. Triple-Double. And the other incident is a bigger one, because the Westbrook incident, again, you know, Westbrook snapped back, they jawed at each other, you got some racist white dude, if the story, again, with the hate hoaxes, I don't even know if this dude was saying racist stuff to Westbrook. Show me a video or I don't believe it. But let's just take it at face value for fun. Westbrook barks at the fan, they jaw at each other. If in a white supremacist society that is intolerant of minority behavior, somebody acting, a black person acting like that would be fired, would take a pay cut, would take a serious loss, because white people, if they were in charge in that way, would not tolerate Russell Westbrook talking back to people like that. It wouldn't be allowed. Right? You wouldn't, I mean, how many times do you see Jewish people talking about how they got loud with the Nazis in the 30s and they just weren't having it anymore and they're going to mouth off to some brown shirt or to some SS officer? It doesn't happen that way. But, okay, so there's a doofus in the stands and Westbrook puts him in his place. They jaw at each other. Okay, you should hear the black kids at work talk to the Chinese guy that delivers their Chinese food to Exit 3. The racist stuff that is said there makes whatever was said in the basketball game pale in comparison. Some real sick stuff, but I digress. The other incident is more to my point, and he brought up Thabo Sefolosha, a good defensive guard, small forward, who's been in the NBA for a while. He was, looks like manhandled by NYPD, cuffed and stuffed, beaten. They broke his leg. Actually, the NYPD did. And Korver makes a big deal of this, right? And of course, he, you know, Sefolosha is a guy of Swiss heritage, lived in, one of his parents is from South Africa. Naturally, Korver puts in that the parent escaped from apartheid, much in the way white farmers are trying to escape from South Africa now, because the tides have turned and the race war that they created there has come full circle, and now you have 9% white population. They're running for the exits as fast as they can because of the violence. Thank you, mainstream media and narrative. So Sefolosha gets hurt and beaten by police officers in New York City. And that's really more to my point. It goes to the fact that to Korver, this is an incident of racism and indicative of the way things are in the country. I guess if you're sitting on $60 million and you play basketball for a living and you fly in chartered jets and everyone is always nice to you because you are rich and NBA has its own security force and you have team managers and a trainer and dietitians and a driver and probably a pretty big house. I'd be curious to see what Korver's house looks like. I guess if that's your lifestyle, these things happen because of what Korver said they are. That there's kind of this racism in the country, and a light-skinned foreigner like Tabo Cephalosha, not exactly a name from the projects, gets hurt badly and his career altered because his leg was broken by NYPD. Well, here in the real world, we get messed around with by police all the time. My brother's ex-military, and he's been rousted and messed with by PD down in Virginia more times than I care to count. It's funny that these things happen. I guess it's synchronicity. I'm reviewing an article from the New Yorker from years ago, and it's an article about a guy, Cameron Todd Willingham, who was put to death in the early 2000s. And he was kind of what we would today maybe classify incorrectly, although I can say this because of, me. He was white trash. And he was put to death based on faulty evidence and killed, dead, for a fire, an arson crime he did not commit. And you can go to the Innocence Project and look at his case and others. And there's an interesting lack of everybody being the same color with the Innocence Project. But I don't want to digress too far because what I'm trying to take a hold of and inform you. You see somebody like Korver in the NBA, and you have to look at his opinion as nothing more than somebody who lives in a very wealthy bubble. It's the only explanation, really. Talk to regular people in their dealings with cops. The guy who created the Silk Road, he's been in prison for years now, and why his name escapes me the second is disturbing. But he created the Silk Road, and he basically gave a big FU to the people who run our country, and they've thrown him in prison on trumped up nonsense. Ross Ulbricht, and so. You have things like that. You have Chelsea Manning, who I believe she's been put in solitary confinement. And all Chelsea Manning did was point out that there is the U.S. military doing these things. And those are reasonably high-profile cases. The 500,000 white people in jail maybe speak a little bit more to that. You could take all the black people out of the prison system, and the United States is still, if not the biggest, one of the biggest prison colonies on the planet. And the rest of us have to deal with stuff. If I speed, or if I got a red light camera took a picture of my car and I had to pay the fine. I fought it, but I had to pay, right? And the cops were rude and I got disrespected, right? They didn't call me Peckerwood Honky. Get the hell out of here, punk. But I wasn't treated like a citizen. I was treated like a piece of dog turd. So, and these were other white cops in Yonkers. So, I mean, when you see somebody like a Kyle Korver and his $60+ million, or other entertainment stars, politicians are the worst for this kind of thing. These are people in a bubble. These are people who don't live in the real world. And their opinions, unfortunately, are taken as gospel. They're taken as meaningful. You should see the replies to Korver's tweet. He tweeted out him writing this article. And the reactions are sickening. So powerful. Everybody needs to read this. White people need to read this. Right? And, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. And because only my legions hear this. But white people are getting tired. I'm not. I live in the Bronx and I work in Mount Vernon, so I don't care about this stuff. I'm not tired of any of this garbage. But other white people are tired of being grouped in as a monolithic group and being blamed for things in the past or things being done by people who look like them of the same skin color. White people seem to be the only people who are guilty in this manner. Nobody else ever seems to be guilty of sins committed in the past by people who have the same skin tone. And it really is starting to wear thin with a lot of people. I mean, I just look around and see, I don't work with very many white people, and I have no white students. So I do my thing. I've got bigger fish to fry. I've got a 20-year-old student who's barely literate. I got to work with that person. I don't have time to worry about $65 million, the $60 million man, Kyle Korver, thinking that white people need to take responsibility, right? All white people. Maybe Korver should take some responsibility himself. Maybe the Freelance Teacher Inc. Could get a big donation. Maybe I'll tweet him that. Maybe the Freelance Teacher Inc. get a donation from Korver so I can help the black community. I'll put it towards the black community. If I'm doing better, my students are doing better. And I don't have any white students. So I think Korver, maybe I'll send him a message. Maybe I'll DM Korver, the $60 million man, and let him feel that he is absolving himself of responsibility. And that's really my last point. We're in the era of indulgences. And it was in the ancient days, right? You could buy an indulgence and you could avoid going to hell. Well, I guess Korver is buying indulgences, right? He says this stuff. It's extremely politically correct. And everybody, of course, this is so powerful, Korver. This is so brave, right? White people especially need to read this. This is powerful. So amazing. Thank you for writing this. All the usual things below it. I guess everybody jockeying for status and virtue signaling under the Korver article. Because remember, Korver, he could just retire and fade into nothingness. But everybody else has to status jockey and virtue signal like a moron, trying to perpetrate that they care about the black community. They don't care, right? Again, maybe next time I'll be more prepared. I apologize to my legions. I should know where Korver lives, right? Him out of Pella, Iowa, right? The most vanilla place in the world. How's that tulip festival going? And so, good Division III football program out of Central, by the way, from Pella. At least there was. So, this nonsense is just sickening. And I asked a friend of mine who lives in the Polo Grounds projects in Harlem, not too far from the danger zone area of Manhattan. And he and I have been friends for about 20 years, and I asked him about this, and he said, I saw it. I ignored it. Right? And it was really the best response, because people who are in the neighborhood or have skin in the game, they don't pay attention to any of this nonsense. $60 million man, white dude Korver, trying to perpetrate that white people should be responsible, pinning everybody with responsibility. You're responsible for things you didn't do. Why? Because you're a certain color. Normal people realize that that's just dumb. And that's what you should think about when you see something like that. This guy is just virtue signaling and goofing off, and it really doesn't make any sense at all. And the whole thing is pretty dumb, and no one should pay much attention to it at all. So that's really what I want to tell you about this. Our $60 million man, Kyle Korver, goofing off, doing his thing. And I guess we'll just leave it at that. Looks like I've got a job to do. But I've got a tutor. All right, I have to make extra money because I don't have $60 million. So, and this one will net me a little over $60. So the Korver article, take a look at it. Prepare to be watching some wealthy white liberal flagellate himself. And the rest of us in the real world, well, I guess we'll just talk among ourselves while the wealthy and the privileged and the amazing people who rule over us jockey for position, virtue signal, and basically, while counting their millions, make the rest of us pretty sick. All right, we'll talk next time. Take care. Freelance Teacher, over and out.